Welcome once again. Oh yes, the Betfred Super League round 18 been and gone. Let's start on Thursday as your Knights claimed a third straight Super League win for the first time in their history, while Hull FC continued their travelling circus of self-destruction. If away performances were recyclable, well, Hull FC would have solved the climate crisis by now. First half, York flew into an 8-0 lead through David Nofaluma and John Bennison, some very nicely taken tries. Speaking of which, Aidan Caesar glided over. What a great solo effort that one was. Tom Briscoe finished the slick move and Joe Batchelor completed the turnaround to give the visitors a 16-8 lead at the break. But just like Jack Nicholson, that was about as good as he got for FC. Hull spent the second half donating penalties like unwanted Christmas presents. Denis Balforth crossed against his parent club. I bet that one stung. Bennison levelled with the boot and Nick Williams strolled through a defence that appeared to have clocked off a little bit earlier. No overtime on this occasion. But even then, York found themselves in a situation where they wobbled a little bit. Paul McShane dropping what should have been the killer blow. Oh yes, but he did redeem himself, didn't he, moments later with a try-saving tackle on the Herminator himself that preserved the win for the Knights. York celebrated this landmark victory and climbed above Hull into ninth. Yes, climbed above Hull into ninth. Meanwhile, of course, the Visitors FC travelled home with another away defeat, and they're still apparently waiting for Steve McNamara to arrive to perform the sort of resurrection usually associated with major religious figures rather than rugby league coaches. Your Knights 20, Hull FC 16. Friday night, and Bradford Bulls finally remembered that the point of rugby league is to win games, staggering to their first away victory of the Super League season against the Huddersfield Giants side so hopeless they could lose a fight with a mirror. Ryan Sutton and Jaden Nikarima crossed before the break as Bradford scraped together a 14-8 lead despite Adam Swift twice reminding everyone that Huddersfield Giants still possess a pulse. Chris Atkins spent the second half quietly kicking Huddersfield further into the abyss with a string of penalties before Wonga Blake crashed over to put the game beyond doubt. Tane Milne's late try for Huddersfield was about as meaningful as finding a tenner in your pocket after your car's been written off. Ethan Ryan then crossed for Bradford's fifth to ensure the visitors went home with the points, and Huddersfield went home with yet another reason to avoid reading the league table this weekend. At full time, Jim Lenihan was as filthy as a pig in a mud bath, hinting at an unconscious bias, joking that reaction seemed to be that Huddersfield can't be scoring twice in Super League. Oh yeah, the Giants fans, well, they agreed, as they now treat every promising moment with the same optimism as someone opening a letter marked HMRC. The defeat was Huddersfield's 11th on the spin, leaving them 6 points adrift at the foot of the table. At this stage, they're not intent on collecting the wooden spoon so much as conducting a long-term archaeological dig for signs of their last win. Huddersfield Giants 14, Bradford Bulls 30. Well done, the Bulls. Over at the Brick Community Stadium, well, Wigan's injury list is now so long it deserves its own fixture list. By kick-off, they'd run out of senior players and were basically asking anyone with a pair of boots and a GCSE to boot in catching to have a go. Somehow that turned out to be enough, though, to beat the Warrington Wolves. Surprise, surprise. Matt Pete's collection of academy kids responded like they'd been told the club had accidentally sold the first team on eBay. Josh Cartwright, Taylor Kirk, Ian McDermott and Austin Daniel all grabbed their first senior tries, leaving Wigan fans wondering why do we bother paying established internationals in the first place. And let's not forget O'Connor. Oh yes, very, very good indeed. Things started out as well as a barbecue at a petrol station for the Warriors. Jay Field pulled out in the morning of the game with a sore back, and within minutes, Albert Hopewati and Warrington's teenage sensation, Ewan Irwin, had the visitors 12-0 ahead, and everybody's thinking, could it be another KR? Oh, you're having a giggle, folks. This is Warrington. Cartwright had only discovered he was playing that morning after Field's withdrawal. Most people finding out that they're working on that day at very short notice, spend the day looking for excuses not to turn up. Cartwright, on the other hand, decided to score instead, dragging Wigan back into the contest while James Bentley sat in the sin bin, contemplating the age-old question, why don't referees like me? Warrington carried their lead into half-time, but 3 minutes after the restart, Taylor Kerr stepped through the defence with the kind of footwork that usually ends with defenders checking whether their ankles are still attached. The scores were level and the momentum had shifted. Irwin refused to fade into the background, flattened by Cade Ellis no less. With a high shot, the teenager climbed back to his feet, slotted the penalty and carried on as if he'd been clattered by a grown man was just another item on his personal to-do list. At 18, he looked more composed under pressure than plenty of the players with a decade more experience within his side. Harry Smith then produced a pass that cut Warrington apart, allowing Zach Eckersley to score his 16th Super League try of the season and give Wigan the lead. Naturally, because Rugby League enjoys emotional whiplash, Matty Ashton, well, he hit straight back, barging over his 99th try for Warrington to level things once again. The difference came from the kids, though. Austin Daniel brilliantly knocked Alan Kieran's kick back in field for McDermott to crash over before Irwin thought he'd replied again, only for the radio referee to discover Rugby League's favourite hobby, finding reasons not to award a try. Oh yes, the wire were filthy on that one. Daniel then finished the job himself, darting into the corner to cap another slick Wigan move, while Kieran landed his 5th kick from 5 because someone in this match had to behave like a dependable adult. So Wigan's patched up squad held together with tape, optimism and academy graduates who probably still get asked for ID buying an energy drink, move within 2 points of Leeds at the top of Super League. Warrington had every excuse to win and somehow ended up providing fresh evidence that no opportunity is ever too inviting for them to waste. Wigan Warriors 30 and second, Warrington Wolves 18 and crashing down the table. Super League Saturday arrived at the LSV, and if ever a game was a Rugby League equivalent of traffic jams on the M6, well, this was it. It never really got started due to all the stoppages. Oh, no. The Leopards eventually, though, staggered past the Castleford Tigers in this one, keeping their playoff hopes firmly alive with all the convincing authority of a bloke insisting he's only had 2 pints while trying to unlock someone else's front door on a Sunday morning. Leeds somehow found themselves 12-0 up despite Castleford doing most of the attacking in the early stages. Lachlan Lamb opened the scoring after a freakishly kind bounce from David Armstrong's chip because Rugby League occasionally decides physics is optional. What a try that was as well, folks. Armstrong then finished another break after Lamb sold the dummy so convincing it probably owes people money. It was beautiful, wasn't it? Castleford, to their credit, didn't fold. Sam Hall came on. Oh, yes, superb Sam Hall. What a great first run it was for him. Right down the middle. Boom! Get that into your boys. He chased down Dejan Arcee's grubber to get the Tigers on the board before Michele Ravalawa, who started the afternoon as 18th man, don't you know? Oh, yeah, he probably thought he was just going to be there in a free tracksuit on the bench. He crashed over in the corner and Arcee landed a conversion that bounced in off the post, which felt like the Rugby League equivalent of finding 20 quid in a pair of jeans you've already checked twice, folks. The Tigers spent long periods camped in League territory as the home side collected penalties like they were loyalty points. I know this is a lot better than the game was, wasn't it? I mean, the game was dire. This is entertaining. Eventually, the pressure paid off, and at 12-12, you could almost believe Castleford were about to do something quite reckless, like win this game. Reality, though, returned 4 minutes after the restart. Yeah, Myla Hanley tore through the defence to finish Lamb's grubber before Armstrong grabbed his second after yet another Lamb dummy left defenders tackling fresh air. Lockie Lamb. Mwah! Castleford's afternoon got even better when Lewis Sr. was simbing for a high tackle on Armstrong, who appeared to fall into contact under his own momentum. The officials decided common sense had already had enough minutes this weekend and sent him off anyway. Even down to 12 men, the Tigers refused to disappear. Gary had another try chalked off after Alex Mellor was ruled to have obstructed in the build-up, meaning Castleford had now managed that very rare feat of scoring 3 tries and officially receiving credit for only the one of them. PLT finally crossed to make the closing minutes that a little bit more uncomfortable for the Leopards, but Lee clung on. Oh, yes, for a 9th win in 11 games. At the end of the weekend, they climbed to 6th, while Castleford remain 11th and a 50 feet in 6th, this one for them. Lee Leopards 24, Castleford Tigers 18. Are you writing off the Leopards? They'll be the Roarers, and they're coming for you. Let's now go to the home of the champions. Wakefield Trinity turned up at Craven Park and treated Hull KR's Fortress like it was a pub with a broken lock. And boy, did they help themselves to pints aplenty, ending the champions' 11-match home winning streak with a bruising win. Harvey Smith got the visitors rolling before Caius fired Tilly spent the second half introducing Hull's defence to the concept of personal humiliation with 2 unstoppable tries. Hull KR, meanwhile, attacked with all the menace of someone trying to return an air fryer to Argos without a receipt. The Robins failed to score a single try, relying entirely on the 3 Reece Martin penalties for reigning champions supposedly defending their crown. It looked less like a title defence and more like someone leaving it unattended on a park bench. Wakefield's early pressure paid off when Smith squeezed through from close range, although Tyson Smoother somehow rattled the post with a conversion that looked easier than finding someone in East Hull wearing red and white. Hull's afternoon quickly got worse when Petter Hiku was simbing for a late high shot, giving Wakefield even more encouragement in this one. Martin Hall KR level with a couple of penalties, while Trinity's Kai Rodwell also enjoyed a 10-minute sit down in the sin bin. Another exchange of kicks left things all square at the break, although all square suggests some sort of balance. In truth, the first half had all the entertainment value of a married couple arguing over who had the last bite of the Greggs sausage roll on the high street. The second half belonged to Fartilla. He barged over once by steamrolling Ryan Hampshire on the line, then repeated the trick just before the hour as Hull's defence opened up like automatic supermarket doors. Smoothie converted both with the kind of routine ease Hull KR could only dream about. Mikey Lewis thought he'd thrown Hull a lifeline late on, only for Joe Burgess's knock-on to wipe out the try. Given Hull KR's attacking imagination had spent the afternoon on annual leave, it felt like the final nail in the coffin. Hull KR spent last season proving they were the best team in Super League. They're now in serious danger of turning their title defence into an annual memorial service. Champions don't usually spend this much time reminding everyone how good they were last year. Hull KR 6, Wakefield Trinity 20. They've only gone and done the double. Super League Saturday ended in the south of France. The Leeds Rhinos sweeping into Perpignan and dismantling the Catalans Dragons with the ruthless precision of a side that knows where that finishing line is, and they have got no intention of letting anyone else get there before them. Brodie Croft helped himself to a hat-trick because apparently the Catalans defence had all the structural integrity of a garden fence and hurricane. Harry Newman and Lockie Miller also crossed before the break, leaving Leeds 16-0 up at half-time, and the home crowd wondering whether they'd accidentally turned up to a public execution. Catalan spent much of the evening displaying the sort of stubborn resistance usually shown by a shopping trolley with one wonky wheel. They refused to disappear, however. Oh no, they didn't go away. Not completely anyway, but they never looked like changing the script, did they? Croft added 2 more tries in an 11-minute burst after the restart, removing any lingering suspense with the enthusiasm of a tax inspector. The biggest subplot, of course, surrounding Maker Sivo, who arrived chasing a Super League record for scoring in consecutive matches. Instead, Leeds opponents managed the remarkable feat of stopping him by ensuring he barely saw the ball. It's hard to break records when you're treated like a redundant fax machine in an office cupboard. Everyone knows you're there, but nobody wants to use you anymore. Never mind, Maker, it starts again. Catalans at least spared themselves the embarrassment of being left with a giant, humiliating fat 0 on the scoreboard. More about that later. IS8 fans, deep into stoppage time, Hugo Thiessen fought his way through a cluster of Leeds defenders to grab a consolation try, celebrating with the relief of a team discovering the disaster was not catastrophic, or maybe it was catastrophic as opposed to apocalyptic. Anyway, you decide. But the bigger picture belongs to Leeds Rhinos Croft. Oh yeah, what a hat-trick. Took him to 20 tries for the season and helped to preserve their 4-point advantage at the summit of the table. What is unfolding is beginning to look less like a title race and more like a procession, with Leeds setting the pace and everyone else desperately trying to keep them in sight. After years of chasing those glory days, the Rhinos are now producing the kind of relentless, confident rugby that has them dreaming of a first league leaders shield since 2015. Their form has been nothing short of exceptional, blending attacking flair with defensive steel. And if they continue this level of performance, the long wait for another piece of silverware could soon be coming to an end. Great win, this one, for the Leeds Rhinos. Many congratulations to them. They march on at the top of the table. In the weekend, it was, of course, St Helens who were nilled at home to a fantastic Toulouse who got 46. unanswered points. Oh, yes. You could almost hear Celine Dion in this one saying telling season took a turn from minor wobble to someone has accidentally steered the ship into an iceberg with a toddler at the wheel. Toulouse arrived at the Brewdog Stadium and they dismantled them with the efficiency of a particularly angry French accountant. The defeat saw Saints tumble out of the top six, but the real damage was inflicted long before kickoff. Paul Rowley's side arrived carrying the sort of injury list usually associated with medieval armies after a siege. 5 of the 6 starting forwards who battered themselves to oblivion against Wigan the previous week were missing, leaving academy youngsters Matty Evans and Chris Matagi to make their senior debuts. It was less blooding the youngsters and more throwing fresh recruits into a battlefield where the enemy had already brought flamethrowers. Toulouse, meanwhile, arrived full of confidence after smashing Catalan's Dragons for 60 points in the French derby last week. Some teams follow up a big performance with a disappointing hangover. Toulouse followed up by walking into St Helens and producing another 8-try massacre, leaving Saints fans to experience the rare sporting emotion of watching their team get dismantled while paying for their privilege. Fullback Ollie Ashelbot wasn't just running the show, he was conducting a full-scale public humiliation with a whistle and a clipboard. Oh yes, he looked like someone who had accidentally discovered the secret menu on a video game while the Saints defence was still trying to work out which button was tackle. He created 5 tries, left defenders chasing shadows like confused pensioners trying to catch a bus, and made the Saints backline look less like a defensive unit and more like a collection of people who had been told to stand in that field over there and just hope for the best, boys. Mathieu Jasson grabbed a hat-trick, but everyone knew Ashelbot was the conductor of this particular French orchestra. Toulouse have gone from a team struggling for a 3-game losing streak to one that suddenly looks capable of ruining plenty of people's weekends going forward. Most importantly, they became the first side in the Super League era to keep Saints scoreless at home, a sentence that will now be carved into the emotional trauma diary of every supporter who spent the afternoon watching their team forget the club they were representing. Saints were chaotic from the opening minutes. Their weakened pack just couldn't contain Toulouse's power, movement and invention, while their own mistakes arrived with the generosity of someone leaving their front door open and allowing the burglar in. A drop ball inside their own 20 gifted Jasson the first try. Then Ashelbot sliced them open again and Jasson collected his second. Jake Shorrocks converted both and added penalties as Saints slowly began to resemble a group of people who had turned up to the wrong event and were too embarrassed to leave. Frustration boiled over when Daniel Saluka Fafita was placed on report for an off-the-ball shoulder challenge on Brendan Hands. Saints weren't just losing, they were losing the plot, which is always entertaining for everyone except the people wearing the shirts. Another Shorrocks penalty extended the misery before Ashelbot's awkward kick bounced horribly for Owen Dagnall, allowing Henry O'Kane to score and send Toulouse into the break 20 points ahead. The second half offered Saints the opportunity for a heroic comeback, but instead they produced the sort of response usually seen from a person who has just checked their bank account after they've come back from holiday. Toulouse defended brilliantly, then attacked with the confidence of elves on the 23rd of December, as they already had this one firmly wrapped up. Ashelbot broke through and set up Teaki Chan, who added another layer of misery. Dagnall's knee injury made things worse, and when Saints defenders watched a Shorrocks kick bounce around like it had developed its own malicious intentions, Toulouse struck again through Paul Ulberg. Then came the flood. Teaki Chan burst down the blind side and sent Romeo Trapi over. Ashelbot created yet another opening for Jasson to complete his hat-trick. Benjamin Liguer added an 8-try, leaving Saints staring at a scoreboard that looked less like a rugby result and more like the final minutes of the Titanic, with Toulouse playing the iceberg and the Saints defence enthusiastically volunteering to be the hull. The defeat dropped Saints below Lee Leopards into 7th place, but the real spectacle came afterwards as some supporters reacted as though the club had not lost a rugby match but had just discovered the Titanic was missing a lifeboat. The crying and despair had reached levels normally reserved for 1912, with Saints fans appearing less like people who had watched a bad afternoon of sport and more like passengers clutching dinner plates while the orchestra played on. Somewhere a supporter was probably writing, "Dear Mum, Toulouse have scored again," before being dramatically swallowed by the waves of online misery. It was a defeat, lads and lasses, not the iceberg. The good ship St Helens, well, it hasn't sunk yet. Oh no. So there you go. And if anyone was hoping this weekend would restore some order to the universe, Rugby League responded in the only way it knows how, by setting fire to the rulebook and throwing it into the river. All three promoted sides picked up victories, which will come as deeply upsetting news to those who believe the Super League should operate like an old village pub. The same people sitting in the same seats forever, complaining when anyone new walks through the door. The newcomers have arrived. They've looked around at the supposed established order and basically said, nice little competition you've built here. Let's have a go. Shame if someone, of course, is going to compete in it. Should we be competing in it? Of course you should be competing in it. It's outstanding what these three teams did this weekend. Once again, Wigan Warriors demonstrated the terrifying truth that it doesn't matter who is standing opposite them. Put a full-strength team in front of them. Put a patched-up squad in front of them. Put a group of exhausted men who have spent the morning fighting a badger in the car park in front of them. Wigan will still find the soft underbelly and tickle it until the opponent starts questioning every life decision that led them onto a rugby pitch. Their greatest skill is not just winning. It is making other teams look like they have accidentally wandered into the wrong sport. Elsewhere, the misery parade continued. Huddersfield, Catalans, Castleford and Hull FC all found new and innovative ways to lose again, proving that consistency is not always a virtue. Sometimes consistency is just repeatedly walking into the same door and blaming the architect. And then, of course, there were St Helens. Saints fans once again reminding everyone that confidence and self-awareness are distant relatives who rarely speak. A few bad weeks and suddenly the reaction suggests that not a rugby team has suffered a difficult patch, but that civilization itself has collapsed and someone has hidden the last lifeboat. The entitlement, well, absolutely extraordinary, this, isn't it? Some supporters don't want a competition. They want a historical reenactment where their team wins forever and everyone else politely applauds. But Rugby League has a nasty habit of refusing to follow the script. The old giants can stumble. The new rivals can bite. The suddenly unbeatable can be beaten. That said, Leeds Rhinos, well, they go marching on. Turn out the lights, folks. The round is over.